Candace Owens, I guess we could start there. She had Dr. Robert Malone, who is the favorite of the Joe Rogan Experience as the self-proclaimed inventor of mRNA. Everybody who seems to have worked on this vaccine technology has not embraced his perspective on this. What, Matt? Sorry, did you want to say?
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, he's patented some things and worked on some stuff, but the claims that he invented mRNA technology are ludicrous.
Ludicrous. Yeah. For some reason, they decide to talk about homeschooling in public schools because this guy's a quack and doesn't have
He's going to need something else to talk about.
Right. His mRNA inventor turned vaccine denialist. He has to expand his reach a little bit. So let
me just qualify, sorry, but he actually says, I got the Moderna vaccine and blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm not anti-vax. He's anti-vax. He's basically a pandemic style quack that says this was all premeditated to control you. Like, so he's and this is the type of thing when Joe Rogan is touting his bona fides and how credible he is. They always like to say, like, hide behind, like, oh, maybe there might be some study that shows like some minor use for ivermectin, and therefore Robert Malone is vindicated. No, that is very, very much not the full amount of the claims that this fucking lunatic has been making.
Yeah, and the COVID eventually will be moving past this, and so he has to kind of set up his next venture, his next grift.
The next way he's going to be useful to the right wing.
Exactly. And so here he is with Candace Owens talking about public schools.
Well, there was a quiet programming going on. You know, when I was growing up, the homeschooling kids are weird. And now I'm realizing that that was an intentional messaging that was sent down, and the same intentional messaging for women.
You know how they're weird? They can talk to adults.
They can talk to adults.
They haven't been run through this industrial assembly line model where they're herded with only their same age group. They have to interact with a diverse world of diverse ages and points of view.
Pause
you know
it.
What happens? They come out better.
Okay, so can I just is he saying that the public school experience, I just want to see if you guys heard the same thing as me, the public school experience, because they're all of the same age and they're in grades, that is an assembly line kind of sheeple experience as opposed to a homeschooling one where you're working with your parents, seemingly. And so that allows you to have a more diverse experience than, I don't know, working with people of different economic classes in your school, of different races, of different experiences. It seems to be the inverse, but he is claiming it's the opposite.
That is what he's saying. You got it. You nailed it.
Okay.
Out of my experience, you know, like you pay a social price for not going to public school, and that's like even considering Catholic school, for instance, let alone being homeschooled for part of that. Like people I know who homeschooled their kids for like the early grades realize that, we need to send them to high school because like it's just not, you need that socialization. You're lacking severely in that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I would agree with his assessment that, you know, our school system as it exists today, you know, based on the kind of de facto racial and economic segregation that exists, is not very good at integrating people into the kind of environment where they would learn more empathy, theoretically, from having to like engage with people of different backgrounds. I don't know how like taking them into homeschooling where they only meet members of their own family, like corrects, like you said. But like, you know, the problems with our public school system and the way it functions, even in that sense, are things that like Candace Owens and him probably agree on. Like they probably agree that we should have regressive property taxes funding our school system for the most part. So it's kind of hard to take their like criticisms of the faults that kind of creates very seriously.
Yeah, well, they don't, I mean, the thing is that, as they will explain in this clip, they are trying to undercut the concept of public schooling in and of itself, not improving it in the ways that you're laying out, Brandon, but presenting alternatives in order to sap public schools of funding and promote school choice. Let's hear from Candace Owens and Robert Malone further, unfortunately for us.
Their same age group, they have to interact with a diverse world of diverse ages and points of view. And you know what happens? They come out better leaders. They come out better able to interact with teams. My younger son is knocking it out of the park. I do feel strongly that among the other things that is severely damaging our children is the educational system that we've allowed to develop.
Well, I've likened it to Hitler youth programs, to Stalin youth programs, and there's a reason for that. It is the government raising your children to believe whatever the government wants your children to believe in that moment. And the reason why I talk about this corrosion of what it means to be maternal, even, it's stunning to me of this, and women don't realize it when we're young. I certainly didn't realize it when I was young, this sort of pro-feminist messaging in school that hits early and says, you shouldn't want a man, you shouldn't want, to raise your family at home. If you aspire to being married and raising your kids at home, then you're a failure. That is the quiet messaging. Yeah, that is totally the subtext, the subliminal messaging that's happening.
Gotta say, I never got that when I went to public or when I went to private school. Didn't get that messaging. Anyway,
there's
amazing.
There's a piece here on vaccine safety, ivermectin and the Dark Horse podcast and investigation. Bradley, if you could pull that up. There's a section here on Robert Malone. I just want to read from it. Let's see. Here it is. Dr. Robert Malone, the vaccine whistleblower. That Dr. Robert Malone is making these claims should be a cause for concern among audiences. He's billed as the inventor of mRNA vaccines, and he's pitched as a brave whistleblower ready to sound the alarm on the research he's pioneered. Malone was everything that Kirsch wasn't to sober, measured, and definitive. Yet, and then Fuller says, yet it's highly unclear if he was the inventor at all, which is generally credited to Caitlin Carrico. It is interesting that the veteran journalist Matt Taibbi, who has written in support of Brett Weinstein from a free speech angle on a number of occasions, initially wrote of Malone as, quote, the inventor of the mRNA vaccine technology on June 16th. But in his subsequent piece on July 2nd, Malone was described only as, quote, a former Salk Institute researcher often credited with helping develop the mRNA technology, a much weaker claim. Nowhere, and I would be interested, Ivan, if anyone's been reading Taibbi's work closer than I have lately, I'd be interested if Matt Taibbi explained the cause for that change, but I'll just continue. Nowhere until his pandemic appearances on Fox News and the Daily Mail and Brett's podcast has Malone claimed to be the inventor of mRNA vaccines. He has claimed to be the inventor of DNA vaccines on his website since 2010, though. We're not told, as mentioned earlier, that he is also on the advisory board of Trial Site News, either a key medical site for vaccine skeptical information. So I just want to put that in the context of this fucking quack.
Yeah. I mean... Go on.
I was going to say, I can only imagine that what, Candace Owens means about schools teaching you that you don't need no man or whatever is like that, we've expanded access to birth control in schools. We have condoms sometimes in some schools, not even a sort of federal government mandate. We have condoms, we have access to sex ed in some place. And so it's less about what they're teaching you and more about what they're not teaching you, which is a version of sex ed that emphasizes that women's role is, basically as a vessel for God to pump out more people. And, anything that's short of that is, supposed to be some kind of perverted sexual education. And, that's just another, like I said before, that's just another form of sexual education that is being disguised as just the way things are supposed to be and really it's just, it's Christian dogma.
Yeah, and the other part of it too, there's the Christian dogma, but there's also the capitalist dogma that they are like clearly wanting the children, the youth to be absorbing, because when they talk about, he says there that it's an industrial assembly line model at schools. They're just projecting there because that's
what they want. They want a Foxconn feeder system.
Exactly. That's what they want with this anti-CRT push too. It's don't question America's greatness and thus don't question your place in it. And when you don't question your place in it, you are a very easy employee for a capitalist.
Yeah, the humanities are that. There's a reason capitalists hate humanities education.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they want. And so for so much of this, it's conservative projection.